We have some breaking news coming in now. The Taiwan government has expressed gratitude to the Indian Navy and Coast Guard for their swift rescue operation of the Wan Hai 503 vessel. Taiwan wishes for the safe return of missing crew members and a speedy recovery for the injured. In a separate statement, Taiwan has rejected claims from the Chinese embassy, reaffirming that Taiwan is governed solely by democratically elected government and is not subordinate to China. Now we move on over to Europe now, where in a recent development in US-China trade relations, JL Mag Rare Earth, a Chinese producer of rare earth magnets, has received export licenses from Chinese authorities, allowing it to resume shipments to the US, Europe and Southeast Asia. The company applied for these licenses after China imposed stricter export rules in April. According to a statement on the Shenzhen Stock Exchange's investor platform, the license approvals are being issued gradually. This development comes as officials from both countries report they have reached a framework agreement aimed at easing export restrictions and stabilizing economic relations. The framework was announced following 2 days of negotiations in London. US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said the deal on an earlier understanding reached in Geneva last month, which had struggled to gain traction due to ongoing Chinese limits on critical mineral exports, a policy that prompted US retaliation with restrictions on sensitive technology exports to China. Lutnick said the framework includes plans to ease some of those US restrictions, although he did not provide specific details. Let's take a listen in to what Secretary Lutnick had to say.
We have reached a framework to implement the Geneva Consensus and the call between the two presidents. Right, so that was on June 5th. So we've combined those two. We've reached a framework for implementation. Now the process will be, we're both going to go back. We, Ambassador Greer, myself, and Scott Bessent, who just left a little earlier, which you saw, because he's testifying tomorrow on the Hill. So the idea is we're going to go back and speak to President Trump and make sure he approves it. They're going to go back and speak to President Xi and make sure he approves it. And if that is approved, we will then implement the framework that we have worked hard over these last 2 days.
Meanwhile, China's Vice Commerce Minister Li Changjiang characterized the talks as thorough and constructive, noting that the framework will now be reviewed by leaders in both countries. Let's hear from Vice Commerce Minister Li Changjiang.
In principle, both sides agreed on implementing the consensus reached by the two heads of state on the June 5th in the phone calls and also the Geneva talks.
As part of the agreement, Secretary Lutnick also stressed that lifting China's export bans on rare earth minerals and magnets will be a key component of the new trade framework. Let's listen in.
Do absolutely expect that the topic of rare earth minerals and magnets with respect to the United States of America will be resolved in this framework implementation. That is a fundamental part of that. Also, there were a number of measures the United States of America put on when those rare earths were not coming. You should expect those to come off sort of, as President Trump said, in a balanced way. When they approve the licenses, then you should expect that our export implementation will come down as well.
Pakistan has announced a 20% hike in its defense spending for the 2025-2026 fiscal year, taking the total to $9 billion, its highest increase in over a decade. The move comes amid heightened tensions with India following New Delhi's Operation Sindoor, a military strike on terror camps in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Despite this boost to defence, Islamabad has slashed its overall federal spending by 7%, including major cuts to health and environmental sectors. Health funding fell by nearly 40%, while climate spending was halved, despite Pakistan's vulnerability to climate disasters. Critics warn of growing imbalances in budget priorities, even as the country relies on IMF support. The defence allocation now accounts for nearly 15% of Pakistan's federal budget and 2% of its GDP, raising concerns over financial transparency and regional stability. Now we move over to Europe. Northern Ireland is on edge after a second night of violence in